And here we go. Another mini professional development. Today, I want to talk about this idea of confidence. I believe that teaching is so much about personal development and not just professional development, and that it is who you are when you are showing up to deliver a lesson, to create a student experience, to create something, whatever that is that you're doing in your classroom. You have to be the sort of person that can show up to do the work. We have to be and constantly be growing into the next version of ourselves to be able to do the job that we've been given to do. And so, with that, confidence is such a factor. I want you to think about this. If you have the greatest lesson plan in the world, and when you deliver that lesson plan, you deliver it in a way where you're talking like this, and it's not convincing at all. Confidence is not just something you can say you have to show that you have it. And so the question becomes, what do you do if you don't feel confident? What if you feel like you're not confident? What do you do if you feel like you used to have confidence and you no longer have that confidence? How do you get that back? And so I want to make this is going to be a two-part series. I want to talk about just 3 or 4 things today that I think are really going to help you to start getting to the mindset and start moving the needle in a direction that's going to help you to find success in your classroom in this particular area. So we're going to jump right into that. So with confidence, look, I think that the number one piece here is this idea that I talk about constantly, which is Stephen Covey's idea of start with the end in mind. What do I mean by that, right? So my wife and I had this long conversation today about how she's like, this does not make sense in my brain because what I want is step one. And it is. This is sort of counterintuitive, and here's why. Because starting with the end in mind causes you to not start at step one, right? It is the opposite. It is starting at the end of this process. But it's really getting very clear on what do you want. It's getting very clear on what is the finished product to you right now. What does that finished product look like? And so in lesson planning, we often start with the end in mind, right? You start with your goals, you start with your student outcomes, and then you build backwards, right? To figure out what are the things that we need to do to get there. But when we think of our classrooms as a whole, I don't think this is something that teachers do very often. So what does the confident teacher, the teacher that feels self-assured, that feels like they are your classroom, this is work you've been given to do. This is the work that you chose to do. And so how are you going to do this where you're taking steps that feel like you're in your work? As my friend Darius says, you would be in your bag, right? And so how do you get to that place? You have to start with this vision of what does that version of me look like? How does that person talk? How do they react to students? How are they teaching? How are they moving through the hallways? How are they showing up at school? And having this vision of how the best version of you, even if that version doesn't even seem doable to you yet, what does that look like? And so, look, I've talked about this many times before, but many of you have vision boards. It might be an interesting idea to create a vision board for your classroom. What do your trips look like? What do your lessons look like? What does your ideal classroom look like? Something along those lines. But you're starting with a goal in mind. No different than if you wanted to build a house, you want to see a picture of that house first, not just a pile of studs and nails on the ground. The next thing that we're doing is having absolute belief that this can actually happen. So when you have that goal in mind, do you believe it can happen? The problem is many of us don't believe. We don't think we are that kind of teacher. You see other people that are doing great stuff in the world of education, whether it's online or in person at your school, and you think, I could never do that. And so the question then becomes like, how do you become a believer that you can do it? What I have found is that telling myself, like meditating on what I actually want, and I'm not necessarily talking about like manifesting here. I'm not sure where I stand with manifesting, but like, I'm not saying that you're like going to dream it so hard that it's going to come true. But I do know that if you're not believing it right now, your brain's already telling you something and you don't know if it's true or not, right? That negative self-talk loop that happens in your head constantly happens to many of us. I know it happens to me. I have to stop it. And the way that I typically stop it is I snap my fingers and I tell it, stop it, right? Like I'm not doing that. I'm not, even if it's true, I'm not having that conversation with myself again. I already know all the negative things about me that I do not like. I do not need to remind myself constantly. But it turns out that your brain believes what you tell it, whether it's true or not. Think about this. The last time you had a nightmare and you wake up in the morning, and I've had nightmares where like I'm rattled when I wake up, like um especially if it has something disastrous happens to my children or to my family, I can wake up rattled, or I can even take that into my day where like if I think back about it, I'm like, man, that was really scary last night. I really didn't like that feeling that I had. So we know it's not true. We know it was a dream. We know it was a figment of our imagination, but it didn't matter because it still stayed with us. And there are studies that have been done that show that folks that repeatedly like they meditate on these things, they tell themselves they are making it making new neural pathways in their brains so their subconscious actually starts believing and starts looking for evidence that this is true. And so what you're doing is literally reprogramming your brain by connecting what you want to see happen with your actual beliefs. So you start increasing the ability to see these things come true. Someone really great to look into for that is if you look at any of the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. We'll talk about that stuff. I'll be honest with you, some of the stuff's a little bit nutty to me, but if I can separate the stuff that I think is a little bit nutty, this is just my own personal opinion, by the way, to the stuff that I go, no, I can get down with that. That's what I'm looking for. The next thing is repetition, right? You get good at stuff by doing it over and over and over again. You don't get good at stuff by doing it once. So, and it's starting with some of these fundamentals. It is going into class and trying to consistently get, if you're working on classroom management, right? It is not the first time you say something, right? So I think about the first time I tried this thing, felt very, very silly, where I like stood in front of the class and I asked everyone to get quiet and no one got quiet. Then I tried this tactic where I was making the lights go off and on, but all that did was make everyone a little bit crazier. And so I saw my friend Nick do this thing where he raised his hand and he counted backwards from 5. He said, yo, all right, everyone, I need your attention in 5, 4, 3, and it worked. I did it, and guess what the result was? It didn't work. But what I had to do was realize that I had to build that rhythm into my classroom. I had to, there's this idea that leaders are repeaters. So I had to build this into my classroom where I constantly kept doing this thing. And then I really did not talk until everyone was paying attention to me. But I had to do this over time. Anything you're going to do that's going to work in your classroom, you're going to have to do again and again and again, because we have to build those rhythms into the students. We have to get them attuned to what we're doing and then keep repeating that over time. I think the last thing, and look, what does that have to do with confidence? It can be extremely nerve-wracking to do something the first time, to try something new, to roll out a new lesson plan, to come in feeling confident, right? And even if you're just acting confident, right? A friend of mine, Nick, told me when I started, another Nick told me when I started teaching that teaching is 90% acting. And so I might come into class and I'm trying to be this best version of myself, and it doesn't work. I have to just keep doing that over time, because otherwise I'm never going to get it right. Think of anything you've done. Maybe the first time you baked a cake, maybe the first time you painted a wall, the first time you rode a bike. It wasn't successful. It was only through repetition that you got good at things over time. And the last thing I want to talk about is this idea of suiting up. If you saw, this is the most ridiculous metaphor or example I could give of this, but I'm not sure if you saw Beyonce, if you've ever seen a Beyonce show, right? If you saw a Beyonce show that if she was wearing like pajama pants and slides or Crocs, I'm not sure, maybe she would still rock the stage, but like there is this sense of like, it is part of it is the outfit. You've never seen a superhero go into battle without like their gear on. There's this sense that like when you put on the outfit, when you put on the tie, when you tuck in your shirt, when you get your hair done, when you get your nails done, if that's important to you, when you do something that is like you're putting on your suit of armor so that you can go in and execute that day and do the thing that you've been given to do, it just makes you feel better. It's also, I think, and not, like, I don't dress up for anyone else, right? I get dressed up for me. And so right now I'm wearing this outfit. I'm sitting in my home office, right? But the beauty of this, the sort of like unintended consequence maybe, is that you are showing to others that you care. You're showing to others that you're showing up on purpose. Now, I'll tell you, I have a friend, Kate, and Kate on through her Instagram. I'll actually link Kate's Instagram below because I think it's that great. Kate shows up to class in costume all the time. So she teaches history in, I think it's high school history, and she dresses the part. Her room looks the part. So she's even suiting up her room when she's doing these sorts of things. And so what you wanted to do is think about, how can my confidence come through the way that I walk, the way that I talk, the way that my classroom looks, the way that my lessons are being implemented, the way that I conversate with other people, with other students in the building, or other teachers in the building. But that comes easier when you feel like you look the part. And so it's just, look, it goes back to this idea of small tweaks lead to giant peaks. But it is also the reason that, look, I get my haircut every 2 weeks on point. I almost never go beyond 2 weeks because I like when I like that piece of me feeling like it's in place, so that I can look at myself in the mirror. I look at myself in a reflection as I'm walking down the hallway, and I feel good about myself, right? And so it is a physical manifestation of how I'm feeling on the inside, and I've seen that it works. We might think that it's narcissistic. We might think that your look should have anything to do with how you feel about yourself. But look, if you think, let me ask you this question. If you think of anyone who's confident, if you close your eyes right now and think of someone that is confident, it's not maybe just what they are wearing, but how do they look? How do they hold their shoulders? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they laugh about stuff? There is a way that confident people sort of carry themselves. And when we can start doing those sorts of things, we can start convincing ourselves, start believing in ourselves that we are indeed confident. And so that's just part of this. Next week, I want to talk about some actual things that you can do in your classroom and in your life that are going to like actual things you are going to do to appear confident, so that you can start believing that you're confident. So that's it, gang. If you need anything else from us, you can go right over to realrapwithreynolds.com, or go over to our Facebook group, Real Rap with Reynolds Teacher Talk. And that is an excellent place to get connected with other educators that are going through the same things, or growing through the same things that you are growing through. And that's it, gang. We'll see you next Monday. Peace.